Okay, hi everyone. Today we have Santiago, also known as Loose Stroke. Thank you, Santiago, for coming to this interview. How are you doing?
Hey, doing good. Thank you for having me. This is like really cool. I've been watching some of the other interviews and I'm really excited about this. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for your comments. I've been watching your Instagram and I've been following your art station for many years now, and you have been such an inspiration. And I also appreciate how you have been helping the community in your own ways. And it's nice to see you offer mentorships over the years.
Oh man. Yeah, thank you so much for the kind words. I think yeah, mentorships and sharing posts and everything, I really do have a lot of fun doing that. So, yeah, hope I can help more people out in the future.
So, can you please introduce yourself and share a brief overview of your artistic journey?
Sure. So, would you like me to go since the very beginning of like when I started painting, or how would you like me to go about it?
Mm, Typically, in a draw your lifestyle or scenario, like from the beginning, like how do you encounter, yeah.
Okay, sure. So, so I've been drawing and painting for pretty much my whole life. Ever since I was like 5 years old, I would draw Pokemon cards. Before my mom went to work, she would give me an assignment of drawing like Pokemon cards. And when she would get back home at the end of the day, she would review it and give me feedback and let me know how to improve it because at the time I was like super obsessed with Pokemon. So that's how it all started. But when the pandemic hit, I was actually I was doing an IT college degree, and I had been doing it for 3 years, and I didn't really like it. And when the pandemic hit, like the online classes were terrible because the college were not prepared for online so fast. And yeah, I decided to drop out, and it was like very hard to do so given that my parents were not happy about it, of course, like because in their eyes I would be studying art, but it was just me sitting in front of my computer because there was no art school or no art community around me. So it felt kind of like a scam in their eyes. So it took a lot of like trial, error, and negotiation to be able to get them on board with me. And at the end of the day, like what I had to do to like help me get their approval is to negotiate with them. So I basically had to tell them that I wanted to try things out for a year where I would study on my own. I would try my best to find work and to, make a successful career in 1 year. If I didn't do it, then I would go back to study. And thank God I did, and thank God I quit because IT is not for me, man. I'm not a very technical guy, and you might realize that when you see like the way that I draw and paint. Like I know some people that are really fans of the tools and like, oh, maybe like there's this add-on that can help you with the perspective or this like color wheel that it's extremely accurate over the other ones. I just grab like pen and paper and that's it, man. Like I have no idea about the tools. But yeah, so it worked out pretty great. After the first 6 months, I got myself into a mentorship with Anthony Jones, Robot Pencil. And he's the kind of teacher that I needed at the time. And since this was like a very expensive investment for me, like I had to be 100% in to making it work. So at the time, I think it was $500 the mentorship with Robot Pencil, and it was like 5 weeks. So he's not a splash artist. I wanted to be a splash artist, but he has a lot of industry experience, and he's a crazy good and efficient illustrator. So he helped me like establish the foundation and how to think about illustration in general and how to become more efficient at solving problems and everything. And at the end of the mentorship, I had like, let's say, like a couple of good pieces in my portfolio, which I would send later on to Ate, Ate Gailan, the head of Envar Studio, and he would offer me an internship in Envar because of those pieces. The one that I'm talking about right now is the Draven piece, which I'm having a hard time looking at it, nowadays, because I think like I can do so much better now. But at the time, it was the one that got me that got my foot in the door. So it was this Draven. I'm gonna send it to you just in case, but yeah, it was this Raven piece that got me into Envar to do some Legends of Runeterra work with them. And if you're curious about how I actually contacted Ate, because I'm sure many people are a little bit shy about that, um, at the time, Ate posted that he was leaving Riot to create Envar Studio. And I messaged him directly on Instagram saying, basically, good luck, and I appreciate your work, and I appreciate the knowledge that you're sharing, and I hope that one day we get to work together. That was quite literally the message. No, uh, not asking for portfolio review, not asking for anything, just saying like good luck. And he replied to me, and he started following me. He said like, yeah, man, like if you keep going like this, I'm sure we're gonna eventually work together. And like that gave me a huge boost of motivation because he was like my hero, and getting him to follow me and to be like, yeah, you can do it, it was like huge. So I'm always going to be forever thankful with for that. And 1 year later, I messaged him back saying that I had this piece, this Draven piece right here. And that's when he got back to me and he said like, yeah, I can give you some feedback. Maybe we can get on a phone call with the art director for Legends of Runeterra, and we can give you like very specific feedback. Maybe with a possibility of an interview for an internship. Would you be interested in that? And I was like, huh, let me clear my calendar. Maybe there's maybe there's a spot right here. Like, of course, I was like, yeah, where do I sign? Please do this. And it happened, and it was really good. So that's how I got my first internship at Envar, which, believe it or not, like it didn't go as planned. So I got my foot in the door. I was actually um, super, super excited about it. And I was like so eager to prove myself that it kind of like backfired on me because by the end of the trial period, they decided not to work with me because I think they got the impression that I was there to prove myself instead of to learn from them. And maybe that had something to do with me not being like um, quiet in the calls, like actively listening to what the directors would say. But instead, I would be like the one that's like, oh, maybe we can do this and maybe we can do that, trying again to prove myself, and that backfired on me. Uh, I understand exactly like that I shouldn't do that, but it's basically the lack of experience that created that problem. Um, but yeah, so once once the internship was over, I felt like really bad because this was like my dream, my project, my heroes and everything, and I was like, nope, you can't do that anymore. So I cried a little bit. Then I moved on, and then I applied to West Studio, uh, and I didn't know anyone at West Studio. I just applied through their page. So I just sent an email. I told them that I worked as an intern with Envar for a while, and they replied back to me. And that's when we did the first piece in my Riot portfolio, the Ashen Knight Shen. It was one of the chromas for the Chinese server, and funny thing about this one, I couldn't like it took over a year to be able to share it publicly, and I didn't even know if the project was gonna get canceled because they commissioned me right after finishing this one. They commissioned me for a new one, but the problem was that uh, it was the same sort of like skin line and chrome skin line. But the thing is like they canceled the project. So I didn't even know if this one I did, I was gonna be able to share publicly. So it was a tough time and a tough year and a tough everything, you know. Um, but yeah, after I was able to like share this one, things went a little bit more smoothly. But like I didn't know it was gonna be a whole year or even more of not being able to share my work and rejection after rejection, or getting my foot in the door but not actually being able to follow through. So it was like a little bit hard because this cycle would repeat like 2 to 3 times. So Envar, I got in, but they didn't want me. Then it felt like West, I got in, but they didn't want me. And then I applied to Six More Vodka, and same story. I got in, but like they didn't want to keep on working with me because I was not fast enough or not experienced enough. And I was like, it kind of like it was a hard hit on my confidence, because one thing is to be able to like get into the door, and one very different is to like have people be happy so that they keep calling you back. But 1 year later, I got to work again with West Studio, and things got a little bit better. And right after that, because of all the work that I accumulated in the past, I was able to work with Pandart, which they reached out to me, and yeah, that's how basically we got to where we are today. So nowadays, I am a splash artist at Pandar Studio, and I mean I don't even want to call myself an art lead because there's so many good people there. But I do help occasionally painting over people's work in this studio, and I help providing direction sometimes. But yeah, that's that's kind of like the long, convoluted answer to my story.
Well, rejection is just a redirection, as they always say.
I mean, yeah, yeah. I think you're right.
And congratulations for reaching where you are right now. It's not an easy road.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty hard, and like it is really hard. But at the same time, I have to admit that I was like super, super lucky because I was lucky enough to start early. So it was, I think there was less competition 5 years ago than there is nowadays. And I think I was lucky enough to stumble upon many, many generous and well-intentioned people throughout my career, and I was able to just make friends. And that's the one thing that has helped me in the long run. So happy to give back to people and help them out in any way that I can.
Nice. Just so you started off with drawing Pokemon fan art, and then between that time when you were still a child and between your college years, did you take any art classes, or did you figure out everything by yourself, or did you self study from the internet?
Yeah, more like the last one. So I didn't have any like specific art uh, colleges or schools that I would go in my childhood. It would be just a hobby that I would do like every single day pretty much. And so when you're starting out, you only like to, or you're only able to copy things from reference, right? And that's what I would put many, many years into. And I built like, I think it was not my passion from the very, very beginning. But I think the more that I got into learning and the better I got at drawing, like the more rewarding it became, you know? So that's kind of why I was like so determined to pursue art as my career path.
Did you do any form of traditional art training before you transition to digital art?
Um, well, not really. Like I would always draw with pen and paper and well, pencil and paper, honestly. I didn't do watercolor. I didn't do like I haven't explored many of the traditional media because the thing that got me into being an artist nowadays is the fact that I was fascinated by League of Legends and that I wanted to always achieve the quality of the game. I was not really like super invested into the fantasy and the IP itself, but since all my friends were playing and I could really appreciate like how good the illustrations were, I knew that this is like the thing that I need to do. So I obsessed over it. And I would draw with quite literally on the back of my notebooks on anything with during my school. But I would not try to do like any sort of traditional mediums. And I went straight from pencil and paper to digital. So it made sense to go into digital because I was trying to do like League of Legends stuff. But yeah, I haven't tried many like art uh, ways of doing art, and I think that's one of my goals for this year to like actually chill out for a little bit and get to like explore so many different directions that I've always wanted. But yeah.
So I was wondering, now that you're at this stage, do you recommend what form of training and studies you recommend for aspiring artists to build a strong foundation in their fundamentals?
Um, sure. So I think I wouldn't really recommend anyone starting out to study fundamentals because I think the only reason that you like art when you're starting out, it's because it's fun, it's rewarding, and you should keep it that way so that you gain confidence in yourself and you feel more invested to put more time into the thing before you turn it into a competitive game. Because I think that when I started drawing, like when I started to take this seriously, I went straight up into anatomy videos and composition and like getting to work on my values and everything. But I think it was a little bit like challenging at the very beginning, especially if you're like self-taught and you don't have like an art school or anyone to give you like feedback or insight. It can be a little bit intimidating because you don't know what the next step is and you don't know what you're doing wrong and you don't even know how to look for things. So, my suggestion would be to start with whatever makes you feel happy, and just get in the habit of doing it consistently because that's the one thing that's going to pay off. And once you feel like, okay, this is for me, this is the thing that I want to do, then you can start to think about fundamentals. But the one thing I would not do is to look for, let's say, okay, I know I'm bad in anatomy, so I'm gonna learn anatomy. I'm gonna look it up on YouTube, and then I'm gonna go to Proco or to Mark Brunet, and then start watching like 300 videos on how to paint every single body part. I would not do that because if there's something that I wish someone had told me before is that it's just like in school when they had you memorize things and you don't really care about them. Like, sure, you can keep them in your brain for like 1 day or 2 days, but after the test is done, like it's all gone. So the one thing that I would love for you to do if you're in this sort of position is to start a drawing that you care about, and as you find the problems in these drawings, like let's say you're drawing for, like a complicated perspective and you don't know how to draw like the torso from below, then you're gonna be like, this is a problem. Now I need to know exactly how to draw the torso from this angle. So you can grab reference, you can watch videos, you can do everything. But the difference is that solving this problem is going to unlock the next level in your painting. So you are going to be much more motivated to learn because you are learning in context. And I guarantee you, you're not going to forget because you're only trying to learn this one thing. And like that's a good rule of thumb for everything, really, to learn one thing at a time. And I think the hard part is to allow everything else to suck, because trust me, I've been the kind of guy that's like, okay, I have 8 hours a day, so I'm gonna learn 2 hours in composition, 2 hours in anatomy, maybe 2 hours in lighting, maybe like a break for grabbing lunch, going to the bathroom, don't all that stuff. Uh, but at the end of the day, what I found is that um, if you can just put all 8 hours or all your available time into one thing, like you're gonna get so much further and so much faster than any other way. Or at least that has been my experience. So yeah, that's what I would recommend.
That's actually a good answer. Yeah, just drawing what you're passionate about, having some self awareness, find out what's wrong, and just focusing on one thing at a time, self evaluate, and learn from there. I think
Yeah.
that's great.
And and by the way, if I may add something into it, like the other thing that I would always recommend is if you're self-taught, like please, please, please get a mentor. Like that's the fastest way to level up and to go exactly in the direction that you want, you know, because it's not necessary, but you have two ways of getting to where you want. So you have the cheap way, which is you're going to put all your time into it, and you have the premium way, which is you're going to put some of your money to get there and cut off so many years of lessons. So you can either spend money or time to get to where you want. If you have and if you can allow it yourself, please go for it. It's like the fastest way of getting there.
So so if there are students that couldn't afford um lessons or mentors for whatever reason, so how can one train their self awareness? Because I think sometimes when I draw something, I couldn't even tell that something is off until someone points it out for me. I mean, that's the beauty of a mentorship, right? But what if you're by yourself? How would you develop that skill of self awareness?
Mm. So I think the difference between, the people that are starting out and the people that are seniors is like it's not that I don't think that they know more than you do. I think it's that they are better at pattern recognition than you are. So if I see a wonky face, I know that it's wonky and the proportions might not be right because I've looked at a thousand faces like that before. So I'm able to pick up exactly like, oh, maybe the eyes are not properly aligned, or the nose is too big, or the perspective feels wrong. Uh, Again, the only difference between you and someone with experience is that they've done it 1,000 times. So you can get that experience just by pure exposure, of like immersing yourself and being able to like be self-aware and be so look at the work of so many masters and compare it to yours and be ruthless about it. You're going to notice that many things are wrong and many things are different, and it's not that you're comparing to like see which one is better. It's just that you're trying to compare to try to pick up on the patterns that make for a good face, for example. If you don't have access to a mentor, which is like super useful, what I would recommend is to probably go into a Discord server of like-minded people or some sort of like in-person community. So recently I found a live drawing session class in my town. So I was attending regularly last year, and it was super fun. And you get feedback from the instructors and your peers and everyone. So, yeah, the way to get better is by feedback. So, if you can have a professional give you feedback, then you want to find anyone else that you can get your hands into. And quite honestly, like it would help so much to make friends, like genuinely make art friends. Because let me paint this picture for you. If you are just on your own trying to learn, let's say splash art, it is going to be very hard and it's going to take a lot of time because you only learn from your mistakes and you can only make so many mistakes a day, and even better, you can only realize that you've done so many mistakes that day. So if you have like-minded people surrounding you, you're all gonna make different mistakes, and you can communicate to each other and learn from each other's mistakes. So you're gonna learn a lot faster. Uh, but yeah, that's basically what I would recommend.
The power of a community.
Oh yeah, I know about that one.
So, could you share a memorable project or piece that significantly impacted your career or your artistic direction?
Mm, sure. I think um, let me think about this for a second. I'm gonna actually think about this for 1 second. Mm. So a very memorable project for me, I think it was the Coven Ari piece that I did for Envar, because it was the first sort of big illustration that I could ever do, quote unquote, professionally. And this is not an official card, it's just a test card that they gave me at Envar. And I was mentored by Gabriel Rubio, I was mentored by Jena, I was mentored by so many other great people. And like this is truly where I was like putting 100% of my ability at the time to try to get it right. And like you can see like the color thumbs, the color keys, they are not really that good in my opinion, because like they just look like I put a filter on top of it and that's pretty much it, you know? And like at the time I didn't know any better, and at the time I was like struggling even to get it this far. But I was like very like this is a piece that I remember with a lot of joy and with a lot of like nostalgia, because this was the first time that I was having someone like look at my work, point out the mistakes, and like refine them and correct them so that I could learn. That was like the things that I learned at Envar back in the day, I still use them nowadays. So even though if it was a short 2 months, I learned a lot of things, and I'm really thankful for this. Especially because I had never tried to do a lot of like storytelling driven illustrations before. I was like the kind of guy that would likes to do portraits and do anatomy studies and do like simple paintings in that way. So this was super insightful on like how to pick the camera angle and how to like draw so that everything looks good in the composition and how to enhance the story and all of those good things. So this was like the one that started everything for me.
I remember this piece, and yeah, it blew up in for quite a while.
Yeah.
So, for your storytelling and cinematography, how do you develop these skills and how do you apply them to your work?
Mm, so I think the key is to identify exactly um, what good storytelling is, you know? And my answer has changed over the years many times, but since I'm an art mentor as well, I had to like get clarity on this kind of subject to teach my students. And the easy formula that I've gotten to uh, refine myself is that your painting is only going to be as good as your story, and the story is everything that you use. It's your compass, it's your guidance. So if you don't have a clear story in your head, it's very likely that the painting won't turn out to be what you had in mind. So first skill that I would try to master is the storytelling, which in order to get good storytelling, you only need like three things in my opinion. Like this is the framework that I use myself when I'm crafting any given splash art piece that you see in my work. So so many people think about like what's the one line or what's the one sort of story that I'm trying to convey. And they say that it has to be like a very short sentence to guide the painting, but I find it to be confusing sometimes because I don't have like a clear prompt to write that one story. So if you want to have a clear, simple, good story, you have to ask like three things, and the order matters. So you have to go through who, which is the character that you're trying to paint, and then where, which is the background information, like where is this taking place, and finally what, which is the action. So only three questions. But the key here is that we need to ask where before what, because otherwise you can end up with cool pose syndrome. So imagine you have like a character performing some sort of action, but there's no context, there's no relationship of the character and the background, so it doesn't feel connected to the story. So that's why many like students hate drawing backgrounds, because they don't know what to put in it, or they don't know how to fit it around it. Yeah. So it's kind of like finding clarity, what helps you out there. So who, where, and what. That's like the basis of any good story. And specifically for splash art, like the simpler the action can be, the better. Because you don't want someone to be uh, like reading and then but casually glimpsing to the side, and giving the side eye and suspicious about something, because that's like too convoluted. You want like simple actions, like one verb, like fighting or like eating or whatever. But like the simpler it can be, the more room you have to um, make all the attention go towards the beautiful thing that you're trying to paint. And cinematography. So the thing about um, the thing about cinematography is that I haven't really watched that many movies or series, or I have not done a lot of like movie studies. Um, Nowadays, so I do understand that cinematography is like a very good resource for like compositions and see what other people have done before. But I've learned that um, if you're trying to get into like composition, you can analyze any given splash art by the gesture of the overall piece or the direction. And what I mean by this is like you can literally trace arrows on top of your desired painting and understand exactly where the flow of an image is going towards. So if you do this exercise of quite literally drawing arrows to see exactly where all the elements point into the image, like you're gonna realize like composition is not that hard. Composition is only about picking up on the patterns and being able to intentionally make every single object in your composition point towards the same thing, which is usually the face or the main action of the character. But like I don't really do a whole lot of like composition and cinematography studies. Like once I found this sort of like way of understanding it, um, I don't know if it would be like too much. Um, I don't know if it would be if it would be helpful to share my screen and try to
Oh,
like demonstrate what I mean.
sure, please. Yeah. Let me see if I.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, give me 1 second. So I'm gonna go into PandaRt,
Let me see if I can see your
ArtStation.
screen. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let me know when you can see it.
Yep, I
Okay.
can see your screen. Yep.
Okay. So let me create a new document and let me copy paste any of the images here really. Like let's try to do, for example, this one. And let's try to do one more. So what I mean by this is like usually you hear about composition that you have to be familiar with like the rule of thirds and knowing exactly where to place your subject, maybe here and then here, or here and here. And you also hear about the the golden ratio and all the basic shapes of composition. But what I like to consider is like how every single element is acts like a leading line to guide the eye of the viewer. So if we look at the hair, for example, like you can see that it is moving in this sort of direction. If you look at the design of the hips, it's moving in this direction. Even the gesture of the body, it's moving in that direction. So every single thing, it's like even the wings of the bird, everything acts as a way to get into the focal point. And that's the difference between a normal composition and a very stylized League of Legends kind of composition. And you can find like you can do this exercise of trying to like trace where the arrows lead towards, and you're gonna realize like you can end up with a lot of like fun shapes. So sometimes you're gonna end up with this sort of like a spiral thing where everything leads towards the same thing, or you can realize that, for example, in this Shivana painting, like, yeah, we do have some um, rhythms following like the overall gesture of the piece. But like what you may also realize is like the character is standing in a way that it's not following the gesture. For example, the character can be contained in this simple triangle, you know? So what they're trying to do is create the interest in the hand, because the hand is like doing the effects with the water and interacting with the background, but it's like a secondary thing because the usually the face of the character, no matter where you put it, it's going to be a focal point because we're humans, we're drawn to faces, we're so familiar with them, so we're going to find them anyways. But yeah, what they try to do in this one is to create a lot more contrast. So the subject is like here, you know, and everything else is revolving around him. So the difference between this kind of composition, for example, and this one is that in here, the character is going with the flow of the image. The pose is quite literally following every single one of the arrows that I draw. Uh, which makes the character feel very harmonious and very much like complementing the rhythms of the piece. It feels very calm, very like very much like harmonious. Yeah. Um, but here it feels like the character is kind of like standing against a moving force, which creates a lot of contrast in the character. So you're gonna find a lot of like different shapes and ways to actually understand the compositions. But if you can get into this habit of like first of all finding where the arrows lead towards and what's the basic shape of your character, and you analyze that, you're gonna realize that this is a pattern that repeats itself many, many times throughout any kind of splash art. So yeah, this is how I think about composition.
Wow, that's a good lesson.
Yeah.
So, in terms of lighting techniques, what's your general approach for your lighting techniques, and how do you balance light and dark values in your composition?
Hmm. So lighting is one of a I think lighting is my favorite subject matter because um, when I was like studying, I always did a lot of like black and white studies. The thing is, later on, I realized exactly why I enjoy them so much, and it is because I am colorblind. I think I have red deficiency, so I cannot see colors super, super clearly, and I cannot really trust my eye for color. And I think it was never a sort of like disadvantage because I never even was aware of it until recently. But that makes a lot of sense because that explains why I love so much to draw in black and white. So the thing about black and white and lighting is I always think about like three values of my composition, you know? So usually there's like a couple of ways to make an image read, which I'm going to show you right here, which is you have a darker subject than the background, or you have a lighter subject than the background, or you can have uh, basically both things at the same time. You know? So this is pretty much like the three kind of scenarios that you find yourself into when you're doing any kind of illustration. And what really helps is to know exactly which one you're going for and to know exactly like how much, how many values do you need to communicate this effectively. So I usually find that three values, it's pretty much the sweet spot for me. So I would only go to like this black, gray, and then this dark value. And you can see it in many of my composition sketches, like these ones, for example. Like it looks like I might be using like a full range of values, but if you actually think about it, there's only like uh, three values here. Like there's the lightest lights, then there's this sort of like mid-tone, and then there is this darker one right here. But that's about it. Um, so one more useful thing about lighting is to be familiar with the concept of chiaroscuro versus no tan. So chiaroscuro means everything is separated by the light versus shadow, like in this example, you know? So, uh, okay, this might be actually casting a shadow here, you know? But this is like the basic representation of this. And then you have the no tan, which means local colors and local values really do matter a lot. So you usually see this kind of thing in the works of people and the great masters like Dean Cornwell and all the other great American painters. But what you don't realize is that you can actually use both ways of understanding a scene in the same scene. So you don't have to commit to only uh, no ten or only chiaroscuro. And I'm going to show you an example. So let me go Dean Cornwell paintings. Give me 1 second. So for example, this one. Like, if I were to ask you if this is chiaroscuro or no ten, it would be a trick question because it's both. So you see a lot of like local values of each of the characters' clothing, but you do see a lot of like chiaroscuro around the faces of the characters. Sorry about the high resolution, you know, but I'm just trying to prove my point really quickly. So if this was in no 10, like you would get to see a very clear definition of the eyes and the eyebrows, and then the mustache right here, and that's it.
Oh,
This would be the no 10 version of this thing. But since we're not doing that, we have chiaroscuro. And this is just a way to group values to make things more aesthetically pleasing and to emphasize some areas over others. So, like, if I only do this sort of like treatment in the skin of a character or the face of a character, it is going to stand out more than if I were to do it everywhere else in the character. So, you can use this as a guide for, you know, to know that this is something that people do. And actually, in some of the other, in some splash arts, you can see it. Like, for example, you can see how the character is pretty much no 10. You know, you can see every individual element of the design, and even if you take the lighting away from it, like you can still see pretty clearly all the design elements, right? Maybe this part right here feels a little bit more like like chiaroscuro, but then all the other background elements, they're pretty much no 10. You know, lighting is not the main thing that makes you understand the silhouette of this thing. So, yeah, just knowing that you can combine the two different modes to work in the same piece, it's something that I wish I knew earlier, but yeah,
Oh,
that's kind of how I think about values.
yeah, I didn't want to interrupt the recording, but I am personally a bit confused. Like, from my understanding of No 10, is it the separation between just one dark value and one light value?
Yeah,
And then it's very distinct. Then for chiaroscuro, I mean, because the meanings are a bit similar, that's why I'm quite confused, like, the difference between the both of
oh,
them.
oh, okay. So
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say is that uh, you can see clearly each individual local color and
Okay.
each individual silhouette right here.
Okay.
You know, which, to be fair, this might not be the best example of No 10 because we do have a lot of contrast in the light. But if we do find, let's look any of the other ones. Uh, wait, let's look Pandar.
So, No 10 is a very distinct black and white separation, while chiaroscuro it's more 3D when it has more gradient. Is that how I'm supposed to understand the difference between No 10 and chiaroscuro?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the thing is like uh this right here, this is chiaroscuro because you can clearly see like how uh the lighting is the thing that makes you understand the 3D forms of this thing, right? You can see the lighting shape here and you can see the dark shadow shape. But I would say, for example, this is chiaroscuro, this is no 10 because you get to see the local colors and the local values of everything, you know? And what I was trying to say is that you can have both of them coexist in the same painting, and that can help you create visual hierarchy.
Okay, so for the pillow, the values has a more smoother transition, making it look more 3D, while for the pinkish part, it's less transitional. There's not much of a gradient, that's why it's more of a No 10.
Yeah, like you can think about No 10 as anytime you see local values.
Okay.
So, for example, the Poro, like you don't see this thing getting as dark, you know? So this would be chiaroscuro, but since we have the local values of the thing uh, be uh, the main thing that makes their image read, that's why I'm calling it uh, No 10. Does that make sense?
Okay, so it's like so because you want it to read more, that's why it's No 10.
hmm So let me give you, you know, you're right. I think I haven't been super clear with this. Let me give you a very clear example of what No 10 versus chiaroscuro looks like. So this right here, it's very much chiaroscuro because you
Okay.
see there's one dramatic light source, and
Yes.
what you see is not like the local values and the local colors of the character, but you do see how the light affects the character,
Okay.
right? This is chiaroscuro. But I would say that this example right here, like especially this character, it's no 10, meaning like the local values of something overpowers the lighting information. So no matter if the teeth are three-dimensional, they are not going to be as dark as everything else because you want the local values to read.
Oh,
So
so
this would be,
Yes,
So
sorry I
this would
interrupted.
be chiaroscuro,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, this is no 10 because you want the thing to read for its local value, not for its lighting information.
Oh, so for Alex painting, it everything in there follows the lighting.
Yes,
So that's why it's chiaroscuro. It respects the lighting. It follows the lighting principles in that painting. And then for the dinosaur piece,
exactly.
it's like exclusive on its own. Like Keith existed on its own lighting. The
Uh-huh.
it's the blue color part. It exists on its own lighting principles. Yeah. So it's like more of a no
Yeah.
ten.
Yeah. And you don't need to generalize exactly like to say, oh, this whole painting is no 10. There's more nuance to it. For example, this part, which is the this pillow or this table that they're on top of, like this is clearly chiaroscuro, you know, because you can definitely see a lot of contrast in the light and shadows. But for the character, like you can clearly tell where something begins and something ends, you know? So it's more driven by the local values than anything, but this part, it's driven by the light. So what I'm trying to say is that you can use both of these tools in the same painting. You don't need to commit to like, oh, there's only one way of making things read. So if you do it, like that's gonna give you a lot of like ways to create visual hierarchy because if you don't need to like, for example, make the poros super dark, you can just have them as a flat element that supports the background, you know? But they don't need to be like just as dark as any of the other elements, so they don't drive as much attention. Okay?
So because they are in the background, that's why you don't need to put so much detail and effort. So in a way, it can follow the principles of No 10, making it look like flat and follow less of the lighting principles.
Yeah. And usually, like what you would see in like the ones that I've analyzed is that you have a lot more of like no 10, it's like especially in nowadays splash art, you have a lot more no 10 in the character because they're trying to sell the design of the character, which means every part should be visible and should be clear, and the background can be actually more chiaroscuro.
Chiaroscuro.
So let me go to panda art again. So this one is kind of a combination of both. Not a good example, but it like it's always a combination of both, but it helps you understand like sort of how to think about things. So if you look at this one, there's a lot of like you can see a lot of chiaroscuro, for example, in the flowers, you know? You can see a lot of it in the tree, maybe in the land right here. And if you look at the character, like every single element, every local color is visible. So that's why I would say like most parts of the character are no 10, you know? Where the light hits, it's a different story. It's chiaroscuro. But again, not too overcomplicated, but just know that these are two ways of understanding a composition and that you can use them however you want in the same painting so that you can achieve more visual hierarchy.
Okay, so
Okay?
now I understand is for these splash arts they want to sell the skin. That's why we follow more of a no 10 rule, no 10 principle.
Uh-huh.
But it still respects some lighting principles like the ambient influence, but it's just less influenced by the ambient, less of
Yeah,
the environment.
exactly.
Oh, I see now.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's because I have been focusing too much on like trying to follow science. That's what I think. I try my best to paint carry school. Then I didn't know I could apply no 10 at this. So it's
I
yeah.
100% agree and understand, man. Like that's the way that I also started, and Like that's kind of the reason that I was having a hard time at Envar because they would like they knew that this is the thing that I needed to learn, but they didn't have the words to explain it to me. So, for example, in the Ari piece, I remember that the she has some sort of like lighting element in her hand, right? In her fist. So I made it glow so much that it overpowered the scene, and I made it like a light source, you know? But they wanted it to be a visual effect that even though it emits light, it's a light source. They didn't want it to affect its surroundings, and I was like very confused by it. I couldn't really understand what they meant. But if you look at the visual effects of many of the skins, that's kind of how that works. Let's see if I can find one. Like if you look at the blades right here and everything, this is clearly something that this is clearly a light source. It's a light VFX, but it doesn't really affect the character. You know,
Yeah.
like the character should be lit by the swords right here and on top of this arm, for example, or in the back of the hips, or everything. But instead, you can see the local value and the local color of the skin, the hair, the uh, yeah, the clothes and everything. So it's basically knowing that you can bend and break those rules and that you have to understand that to achieve the style, basically. So
Yeah.
it also was super, super hard for me. But what helped was to, have other people like observe what other people were doing. So
Yeah, so now I notice that the environment is more chiaroscuro and the whole painting, the characters, the blade, excluding a bit of the face, is mostly no ten, but the face it follows a
mhm.
bit of chiaroscuro because it has
Yeah,
to, yeah, if it has to follow some sort of signs, if not the face will be thrown off because it has to follow the environment lighting.
yeah. And usually what you wouldn't try to do, like this kind of is an exception, but what you find in many, many splash arts is that, for example, the makeup, the eyelashes, the eyebrows, the mouth are way darker than the skin, meaning the skin feels a little bit flat. So, for example, here, you know, even though the skin is in shadow, it's never gonna get as dark as the eyebrows, eyelashes, and mouth. Same here. Because this makes it look super soft and super appealing, and that's the style the Chinese really like. So, yeah. What you wouldn't see is like, even though the eye socket is really deep and three-dimensional structure, you don't see such a harsh shadow right there. And same thing with the eyes. It's like they have to be more contrasty than the rest of the skin to pop out. But again, there are some characters where this is like 100% the way to go, and there are some other occasions like the Alex Flores painting where you don't need that and you just need like more mood, you know? So
So it
just be
depends,
aware that
right?
these are, and it depends really. But yeah,
So
I hope
for
that was helpful.
Yeah, so for the lady piece just now, we are focusing more on the face. That's why the contrast is on the facial features, and even for the eyebrow, even though it's like darker, we made it less dark so that the rest of the facial features can pop out.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, I think this is the first time that I'm hearing about all of this,
Oh,
and
really?
yeah, I think the viewers will find it helpful. Yeah, this is the first
Yeah,
time I'm
for
hearing
sure.
about this, man.
Yeah. Like, to be fair with you, I haven't heard of these as much as well. The only way that I found out about this is at work, really. And not because they taught me like, oh, this is how the style goes. It's because uh, so in the company you have this chat where everybody posts their work and you can see which feedback they get. I look at all of them, not only mine. So I know exactly like what the client likes and what usually gets corrected and what usually is not approved, and so I can get a better understanding at the style. But yeah, um, it's kind of like a I don't know, just a tool for you to use basically. So I'm sure there's gonna be many more useful things throughout the interview that I can share with you.
Nice. So
Yeah.
for your thumbnails, how did you do those powerful gestures and dynamism with like so little lines?
Mm. So like I do have a general answer, but would you like to look at any specific thumbnail that I've done before and I can break it down, or do you want me to just go on
Uh,
general lines?
which one do you think is the best for to explain?
I mean, I don't think it's the best, but definitely,
Oh, you're more
I
comfortable.
I really like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think these are a good example of my thinking process. So, I had a workshop recently. I did a workshop recently with La Galería Roja, which is a online school from Spain, and I taught. I showed the process of these thumbnails in there. So I'm picking up this example because I want to go back to the storytelling side of things. So remember how I told you that we have to keep in mind three things to create a good story: who,
Who,
where, and
where,
then what.
what? Yeah.
That's, yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to do here. So when I got commissioned to do this Lucian piece, my first instinct is to say, okay, so who's my character? It's Lucian. Who is my where's my background? It's the Soul Fighter arena. So it's all supposed to be super dynamic, high action, very dynamic gestures and motion and everything. And what? To find the action, like something that you can usually do is to look at the character's skills in game, you know? Because if you think about this, uh, those are the actions that the players are familiar with, you know. So you love Ari because you know that she taunts, and you love Aether because you know that he can summon soldiers, and you love Yasuo because you know that he stabs with his sword and creates this tornado. So if you can show that in a little in the illustration, it's very likely that the players will recognize it and will be invested in it. So the thing that I've learned is that you can start there. So, for example, this is a very highly dynamic illustration, so looking at the skills might be worth it. And usually, the skills of this guy are either shooting some sort of way or dashing in some sort of way. So that's the first like layer of thought process. Then what I thought was, okay, so let's go with dashing since we want a lot of movement in this skin line. But dashing is a little bit like ambiguous, you know? You can do many things about dashing. So you can ask the question, why? So why would this guy be dashing? So I thought about it like this. So maybe he's dashing to the side because he's trying to get a flank on the enemy, you know? He's trying to dodge the tank and look for the squishy guy in the back. Or maybe he is dashing forward, as if he just used his E skill in game. He's dashing forward to chase someone. Or what if he's dashing backwards? You know, backwards could be like falling or dashing like that. He could be dodging a bullet, for example. You know, or what if he is well, this is not even dashing, but this is just a victory pose. But what if he's dashing forward, but not dashing really, but about to dash? You know, so you see the impact of the knee touching the ground and then about to like whoosh, you know, right into space. So that was my thinking process, and you can see clearly that all of these thumbnails were directed with that in mind, you know. And at the end of the day, the client chose this one, and they had some modifications, but that was the thought process behind them. Um, so you can see that in the thumbnails, like I'm not super polished with my lines. I'm not super concerned about making everything pretty and getting all my edges to be right. Like what I need is mostly like a something that feels clear and that feels understandable for anyone rather than finished. Nowadays, my thumbnails are a little bit different, but this is like the general thought process and goal still really applies. So if the character has a very contrasting outfit, like very light pants and then dark leather jacket, I want to make sure that I include it in my thumbnail in my values because if I just do a one value silhouette for the character, I'm gonna miss on the nuance of the local values. And that might be a problem later because if I put my character to be just this one value and then I make everything around it to be lighter, then it reads as a silhouette. But if I have this element that it's very light in value against this light value, it's gonna be merging. So I have to design my values according to my local values of the character to make sure that they are the thing that gets the most attention. So this was the yeah these were the thumbnails and this is the final painting.
A lot of understanding the context, and yeah, it's based on context, and then you start creating.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Because I've been following your Instagram, and I see a lot of like live drawing many years ago, and I thought they look very dynamic and very powerful. That's why I was like wondering how do you manage to reach that level, and how are you so good at live drawing?
Mm.
Like gesture
I
is so
mean,
important. Yeah.
yeah, I appreciate the comments. I think I'm not really like the best one out there for gesture or anything, but what I realize is that like especially when I'm doing any sort of like live drawing, it's usually more fun for me to not be accurate and not to be bogged down by the details, but to have a little bit more of like fun shape language in mind. So for example, if you see a deltoid, it's like this three-headed muscle, and then you have this arm, and then you have these muscles right here. And this is like cool, but I don't want to do this when I'm live drawing because I'm not there to capture the exact thing of the subject. What I'm trying to do is like group these into shapes that I can actually use from memory. And for example, a very common way to stylize the shoulders is to like square them off. So instead of having them being super round, like you can have them be like really like square. So it indicates the robustness of the shoulder. It indicates a solid structure. And for example, you can actually make the elbow super pointy, you know, and try to make the tricep, for example, into a smooth kind of curve, you know? So what I'm trying to do most of the times when I'm doing gesture is, yeah, of course, find your line of action, then design your figure around it. But like what I'm trying to always do with this sort of thing in mind is to basically find ways to make the lines look pretty and look convincing without necessarily being accurate. So you can see here, like, I'm trying to paint this lady, for example, and she's got like the knee right here, and then she's got like the other feet. And you see, it took me like 15 seconds to do this. But once I get to this point, I can actually start about refining the kind of shapes that I want. So you could go for like, okay, the breast right here, then you got the information of um, the thorax, and then you go into um, the navel, then you go into the hips, and then you move on, and that is like a very complicated line, you know. So I would not really do that usually in my live drawing sessions. I would try to find a way to simplify this into one line as much as possible. you know, and keep the complexities on the other side of the figure. So here I can add like the proper twisting of the torso. I can add like wrapping lines around it, and I can like add more accurate muscle information, you know. But that's that's a silly tip. I'm sure you've heard it before. Like to have one very simple side of the silhouette and then one complex side of the silhouette,
Yeah, to
you
balance
know?
things out.
Yeah. So that's usually what I try to do with gestures. And I think maybe something that can also be helpful for the viewers is to um, look for the right kind of references. So people like Glenn Vilpool, I'm sure I'm spelling his name wrong. Maybe it's with a double P. But Glenn Vilpool, he's a old master and he has some videos available in Proco to show you exactly how he approaches gestures. So you also have like usually Proco, it's my go-to and pretty much everything I learned about gesture I owe to Proco. And just this is not sponsored by the way, but this is just good advice in general. Everything that I've learned so far I owe to this guy on YouTube. Have you watched him before, Marco Bucci?
Yeah, some of his videos.
Yeah. So this guy right here, to me, he's very, very good teacher, and he is really good at explaining difficult concepts and breaking them down into simple things. So yeah, I would look these two up, and especially like Proco for gesture. That would be my helpful thing.
Force for animators.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, who's the author for
but
that book?
yeah,
Yeah, I think force for animators would be useful as well.
100%.
Yeah. So for your workflow for grayscale, I mean for coloring, do you go from grayscale to color or do you just jump straight to color? I'm guessing grayscale, right?
Mm. So my process has changed a lot over the years. And as I feel more confident, like straight up drawing with shapes instead of lines, then values, then layers for the lighting and shadows and everything, my process has become a lot more simple nowadays. So um, I don't really like, yes, we do follow like the black and white thing first and then color thumbnails from those. But I even start some of them with color directly because believe it or not, like for example, for Dark Source Zoe, I started with color because I knew it would be easier for me to balance things out, the saturation and everything, if I had the color exactly in place, and then I can design everything around it. But usually it is black and white first. Mm, and the thing about this is like, especially for thumbnails, you want to give the impression and the idea of the painting really quickly. It doesn't need to be well constructed. It doesn't need to be fully rendered, but it does need to be clear. So I'm gonna show you what not clear looks like. So these thumbnails, uh, they are a good example of something that would get a lot of feedback in the studio and in many other studios. Because even though you can see like the overall intention of the composition and the poses and the lighting and everything, like this is very easily going to be criticized because it doesn't have its local values yet. And again, since we're trying to sell the character, we need to accommodate for it. So, for example, this one right here works really nicely because we have dark horns against a light background, right? So it works like that. But actually, the design of this character asks for light horns. So everything is going to be way, way lighter, you know? So if I put it against this background, it no longer makes sense. And I'm going to have to struggle with that and work through that thing during the later stages. And that's going to create more changes and it's going to be more stressful. So, if you know that this is like a very important part of the design and it needs to be clearly, um, it needs to be like easily readable, you have to design your background around it, you know? Make sure that this is overall darker so that it reads. So that's why I would say that this is a bad example of thumbnails for me nowadays. So usually, uh, some of the more recent ones, like let me. Oh, I haven't posted the Morgana one.
Yeah,
I realized.
I saw your Morgana one on Pandat website.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I should post it really soon. Um, but yeah, for example, when you see thumbnails like these, like now I am considering the local values of the elements, like in the dress and everything. And yeah, that's pretty much the difference in the thinking process. Also, nowadays I'm using a lot more photo bash to get things quickly and to get things right. And I think this is not something that I hear many people talk about because, well, it's one thing to use photo bash and it's one thing to like it's a completely different thing to do everything from scratch. Since you like I think that since you are required to do things very fast and they need to be good looking and good quality, I use Photobash all the time to create shortcuts for me. So I'm going to show you a piece that it's not work related. It's just yeah, it's just a personal piece that I was doing for a mentorship of mine. So give me 1 sec. So I was trying to paint Spirit Blossom in Italy, and I wanted to create a painting where both the tiger and the girl are just as important, you know? And that's what I did. So this is my thumbnail, and this probably took like 2 hours to create. But the only way that I was able to get it right and to get all the elements in place is because there's a whole lot of photo bash going on. So maybe the character is the one thing that I haven't photo, but you can see, for example, the weapon. The weapon is just a screenshot right now. I grabbed it, I cut it out, and I put it there. And the tiger, it's a screenshot from the 3D model. And all the leaves and everything, you can see how crappy they look once you zoom in. But from afar, they don't look that bad, and they just give you like an impression of an accurate thing. The waterfalls in the back, like you can see the traces of photo bash, and I'm just painting over. Like eventually, I'm gonna paint over the whole thing. But this is just to help me get things really going fast and make sure that I'm going in the right direction without spending a lot of time. So this is what usually my process would look like nowadays. And I can do it in black and white, or I can straight up in color, whichever you feel like you're more comfortable with. Nowadays, I think I'm more familiar with color, actually. So, yeah.
Wow. So, question from Chase, you would like to ask, like, do you have any insights into the storytelling, the character performance, and composition during the drafting stage? It's translated from Chinese. I try to translate it from Chinese to English.
Yeah, no, for sure. This is really good question. So, let me dive a little bit deeper into the storytelling aspect to make sure that we're both in the same page. So, I talked about who, where, what, and I talked about how you should think about the arrows following sort of the rhythm to find to point towards the focal point, right? So that can be easy, but sometimes the thing that people get wrong is the who, ironically, defining their character. So if I show, for example, Jinx, which is a very crazy character, kind of like the Harley Quinn of League of Legends, right? If I show her doing something like, I don't know, just sitting, enjoying listening to music, or studying, or cooking, that's not going to be a very Jinx like activity. It's going to feel out of character. So I think it was I got this from Victor Mari, the senior illustrator for Riot Games. Um, that you can define a character based on its gameplay, on its lore, and based on its looks. So a good example would be, for example, Amumu. So he's a mummy visually, you know. In the lore, he is cursed, so he is a sad guy. That's why he cries all the time. And the gameplay, the gameplay, he's a tank, but it's very much like the gameplay feels like you cannot make friends because every time you're trying to grab people, they're trying to run away from you because they're gonna be killed if you manage to reach them. So if you think that if you have all of those in mind when you're designing a painting, it's very likely that you're actually gonna get an idea that feels in alignment with the character, versus just having a Mumu fighting in some sort of random way, you know. And I think about storytelling, uh, like don't get me wrong, I'm very much new to all of this, but since I am mentor, I've been trying to like boil it down for my students, and I don't see it talked about pretty much anywhere else. So usually what I think about for good storytelling is three things. Let me write them down again. So number one, it's facial expression. Number two is character plus background interaction. And well, number three is the elements that I've talked about before. But these two, they really, really do create a foundation for you to understand storytelling. So if you have a character that is not related to the background in a meaningful way, then it's not going to be a good piece for storytelling. So I can show you one that I'm not really a huge fan of, and then I can show you many that I'm a huge fan of. So, for example, this Dr. Mundo, which was produced inside the studio. So we're gonna look at this guy, and we're also gonna look at one more Dr. Mundo piece, so you can see what I mean. So I'm gonna show. I want you to participate here with me. So which one do you like better?
I
Do you
like
like better this
mm,
or this one?
I like the second one more where he's in the gym.
You
Yeah,
like this one better?
yeah. I felt that I felt that I'm there with him and he's like it like in a way interacting with me, although he's like showing me of expression. But yeah, that's just
Uh-huh.
me. Yeah, I felt that I'm
Yeah.
like witnessing him in the gym and he's showing me some expression.
Yeah. So so if you've told me like what you've seen in this one. So if you had to describe this image to a friend that's not looking at it, what would you say? Uh, could you describe this piece in one line for me? Like what's Mundo doing?
If I'm not a League of Legends player, I would say there's a buff guy with a fighting pose with a stagger in possibly Chinatown.
Yeah. And do you think it would make any difference if instead of this background I had like a gym or a river or a mountain or anything in the back? Do you think it would make any difference?
Not really, because I could like pose in this position regardless of where I am.
Exactly. Now, do you think this pose and this sort of image could happen everywhere else, like in a mountain, in a Chinese temple, or anything like that, and it would still make sense?
No, because it felt very energetic and exaggerated to the point that I felt that I can only see this in the gym.
Exactly. So that's kind of what I mean with character, with a meaningful interaction between the character and the background. So he's interacting with the background in a very stylized way because he's not talking to other characters in the background. He's not really interacting with the gym itself. He has like one dumbbell and he's looking at the camera, which makes it very, very splash art. But um, it still makes it feel like the character is connected to all of these other characters and all of these other elements. So how do you achieve that? Well, usually like um, you can think about character interaction with the background by a prop, which is the dumbbell, you know? So if he was not holding the dumbbell, maybe maybe you can do something else and have a different background and it wouldn't be complicated. Uh, but what I'm trying to say is like since he's holding the dumbbell and he's looking at you and you see the interface of a live stream, the whole story comes together, you know? If you look at the other one, like where is he looking?
I can't tell.
Like he's looking like in this direction, right?
Yeah.
And he's got this arm like raised up about to fight and then he's got this fist and we have this floating book right here and kind of like that's it, right? So do you see the difference? It's not really interacting with the background. So I think a much more compelling story would be to make Mundo interact with the book. Maybe the book is where the magic and all the different visual effects come from. So maybe he could be looking at the book, you know, and maybe the book can be like right here, and he could be grabbing the book. Oh, wait. Actually, let me put this higher. So something like this. If he is like reading this book and the pages of the book are flipping and flying all like crazy, and then you see like all the visual effects point towards here, then we do have a better story. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, there will be more interaction, but does the book have to be designed in a way such that it's more of a Chinese cultural thing since he looks like he's in Chinatown to make it look like
Mm-hmm.
he belongs more in an environment?
Oh yeah, like everything is like visual problem solving. So if you put the book right here, then you can show the roof. Fine. Then you can move the character a little bit to the left and show some roofs right here. Or you can actually make this into a taller building and maybe he is second floor or something and you can still see like a lot of roofs right here. So it's always a matter of like accommodating the background to the character and not the other way around. Because usually the character is the thing that you're trying to sell. So it has to be the most important thing. And if I happen to need the arm to be raised and the book to be moved in this direction, maybe like I can move the background around to better fit the needs of the splasher. But yeah.
So
That's kind of what I mean.
so for this piece, they're halfway there because like the character is dressed in some sort of Chinese cultural outfit and the environment is somewhat like Chinatown, so he's halfway there, but the story isn't strong enough. That's why you change the pose such that it solves the problem of making him look like he's doing something stronger, there's a stronger sense of action in the correct place. Is that how you problem solve to make it look like he belongs in the environment?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like stronger storytelling, we both understand it, but it might be difficult to for some of the viewers to actually understand what that might be. So instead of stronger storytelling, I like to think about it as clear and easy to understand. So the test that I did with you of try to tell me in one sentence what this image is about. If you don't have a good answer from a friend, from your mom, from anyone that can piece, it's because the storytelling is not good. So they don't understand it. So that's when you understand that you need to refine it so that the action can be easily described. So that's why you need a simple action, like one verb. Something that is really um, funny about this. Let me show you. There is Jennifer Westling. She's a Riot Game artist as well, and I love her thumbnails and I love everything that she does. I just happen to find that she's one of the artists that likes to do the several things in the same kind of illustration. So remember how I talked about one verb, one single action? Well, for example, she right here decided that this character is keeping her cool. She is putting her glasses back into place while, keyword in here, fighting the mist. So that means two actions, the glasses and fighting. So it's not that it can't be done. It's just that it needs more of your attention as the viewer to actually understand what's going on. And it needs more of you as the painter to make sure that both actions read clearly. Because it's more difficult to read two actions clearly than to read one clearly. So usually when you see this kind of ideas of two things happening at the same time, the client would probably never pick them. So just something for you to keep in mind. I'm sure there's many other examples. So this one right here. She's coming down from above, shooting into the mist. Two actions. She's coming down from above. So she's like climbing in some sort of way. And then she's shooting into the mist. So usually what ends up happening is if they pick any of these ideas, they end up downplaying one of the two actions to have the other one be the main one. So I think it's just a good practice in general to avoid having more than one action happening in the same frame. And yeah, you can do so by using the thinking framework that I described.
Right, so back to
Okay.
just now that painting where he belongs in Chinatown. First of all, it's like his facial expression isn't strong enough, so you can't tell what exactly is going on. His pose is just very
Mm.
generic compared to him casting magic from his book, which is a stronger action. So by changing the fighting pose to him reading a book with all the magical effects coming out, he looks like he belongs more in that environment. Like everything starts to connect
Yeah,
more.
that's exactly right. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for explaining all of this, man.
No, no problem. I enjoy doing this, and that's why I genuinely like to share. Mm,
Did
so yeah, I hope that answers Chase's questions.
well, hopefully you'll get to see him in China soon.
Yeah, yeah, hopefully.
Well, it's been an hour and 30 minutes. Do you need to drink some water first?
Oh no, I'm fine.
Right.
Don't you worry about that.
Okay. So this is part of the questionnaire. Like, is there any specific techniques you use to capture the essence or personality of a character in the splash art? I know expressions are important.
Mm, okay. So usually, like My thinking process for that is kind of what I just described. If I have a hard time thinking about the one line story for my painting, I dive in deeper and go into, okay, what's the gameplay, what's the lore, and what's the visual of this character? And I come up with a simple adjective, like one word for each one of them. And I would put it like right in my monitor to be like to help me guide myself in the thinking process. And sometimes there's characters that don't really have a super clear essence of what they're all about. And it's because they're older and the designs are not as compelling as some of the other ones. I'm going to give you one example because I've gotten to draw many of them. So Shen, right here. If you can see like all of the, I'm actually going to do this in Skin Explorer. Shen. So usually you can find the iconic elements on a design just by looking at the different skins of a character. Um, what I'm thinking about is like if you look at Mickey Mouse, you know, you can clearly see that his design is all about the big gloves and the ears, you know? And no matter like which kind of like perspective, you always see the two ears, right? So because that's like the most iconic thing about him. So you're usually trying to find what makes the character iconic for Lee, and sometimes the answer is not even on the design itself, because, like I told you, some characters are dated and, in my opinion, not super well designed. Um, so if you look at this Shen painting, uh, what would you say it's his most iconic element in the design, like Mickey Mouse's ears? What do you think it's about Shen?
I would say his hand expression and maybe his glowing eyes.
Okay, so you got it right, but it was supposed to be like a trick question for you because, uh, yeah, there's no really like an iconic element in his design because every other character has swords in the back, and every other character has glowing eyes and has a mask. You can think about Zed, you can think about Talon, you can think about many other characters in the game. But the thing that's iconic, you're right, it's the hand pose. And that's why you would see it in many of the other splash arts. So this pose right here, this is everything that makes Shen really iconic. So if you look at a painting like this, for example, it is difficult to recognize that this is Shen. It could be Tryndamere, it could be, I don't know, even Lulu. Any other kind of character in the game could be, you know? But once you do have the actual hand pose, then you're good. So there's usually that part of creating like a iconic characters and I mean iconic splash arts for characters like this. But I feel like I'm getting sidetracked. Can you repeat the question again for me?
Well, how do you capture like the essence and personality of a character in splash art?
Mm. Okay. So thank you. So this is basically how I do it, but um, since I'm a lazy guy, I don't really like working super hard, and I don't really think that most people work super hard. But what I really like to do to help speed up the process is to write things down instead of drawing things out. Because I'm not that good of a draftsman, you know? Like I can do some basic stuff and some like something that might look good or impressive or whatever, but there's many more gifted artists that have put more time into it. So what I like to do is writing things down, because if I write down my ideas, I don't have to draw them out to know whether they're going to work or not. So let's say, let's do the example again with Mundo. So Mundo in a fighting pose, and Chinese buildings in the background, right? That was the first idea. And the second one actually looks like Dr. Mundo is showing off his muscles in the gym. All tanky characters look tiny compared to him. He's live streaming. So if you look at these two ideas just in writing, you know which one is more solid than the other ones, you know? Because this one right here feels generic, this one right here feels cohesive. So I didn't need to draw them to see how it played out. And that's usually what I do. So that's kind of my thinking process. And yeah.
So, do you what challenges do you typically face when creating art for different champions or teams, and how do you overcome them?
That's a good question. So usually, um, like, don't get me wrong, there's always a lot of patterns in splash art, meaning there's always a base quote unquote set of rules that you have to follow. And even though you can like tell what the rules are, every single painting is very different because you have different materials to render, you have different lighting setups, you have different character proportions, you have different storytelling elements, you have different um, backgrounds. So it's not the same to draw an interior than to draw a open sort of environment scene. And even though the rules of the values and the notan, the chiaroscuro, you have them in mind, always different. Um, for example, I do have many, like, I think every single one of them has been a challenge. Like, if I were to tell you that one of them was like, yeah, I suffer, I would be lying to you. And especially when it comes to getting feedback, uh, it's really hard. So I'm going to show you an example. So this is the final painting of Zoe, right? So the thing is, what's difficult about this character is that it has many different glowing elements. So to be able to organize all of these elements so that not all of them glow with the same intensity and you know exactly where to focus on, it is like a process of trial and error, you know? So you have the glow of the eyes, you have the glow of the dark holes, you have um, the hair of the character, then you have the mist. Everything is like calling for your attention. And it's so easy to just create a color dodge layer and go over them and just like oversaturate them to the max, you know? And yeah, balancing things out was like the difficult part about this one. Um, let's see. So this one right here, the difficult part was actually to make sure that the character was um, iconic enough in the frame. So this is the pandared version, and this is the painted over version by Riot. But the thing is, like, since this character has this giant harp, it is super difficult to um, find an angle and find a pose where you can effectively showcase the character and the harp. So you can have like all different sort of like variations of poses, and at the end of the day, you're gonna realize 99% of the splashes of this character look pretty similar, and it's because it's the most efficient way of showcasing the character. So I've
Yeah.
tried different poses, but yeah, it they always kind of like resort back to this specific camera angle for this character.
Yeah, the essence
Uh,
of sauna.
yeah, exactly. Which one else? Like this one right here. I think the difficult thing was to balance out the style because the Soul Fighter skin line feels more like a comic book kind of style, with the dark outlines and also with the visual effects that I don't know if it's just me, but I think the visual effects of this skin line look like they come from uh, Demon Slayer, the anime,
Yeah.
you know? So it's it's like fun, but it's also like something that you haven't done before, so it's always gonna be like difficult. Mm. But yeah, the most difficult thing about any kind of illustration, and I think that if anyone tells you any other answer, it's feedback. It's getting feedback every single time and every single day. Because, of course, you are a human being and you like to do things your way. You don't like seeing your artwork turned up in front of others and criticized and whatever. It is hard to get feedback because this is something that I wish was talked about a lot more. Because in the beginning of my career, the reason that I was not able to uh, fully go through with all the other studios had to do with the fact that I was there trying to please my own taste and my own art direction instead of following the one that was already established. So um, I think, for example, I hate getting feedback. I don't know one artist that doesn't hate getting feedback, you know? But you do get better at handling it and you do get better at uh, framing it in your head so that it doesn't look like you're incompetent in front of people. Because as an artist, you might think like, oh, I got a lot of feedback in this piece. They must think that I'm not like, I'm an imposter, right? But usually nobody thinks about you like that. And it's like, it's the nature of the beast to receive feedback every single day and every single time because when you work on an illustration like this for weeks, it's very, very easy to get tunnel vision and you become like not aware of the problems anymore. So yeah, it's super important to get feedback. I hate it with all my guts, but I've learned to accept it.
I think I think it's hard to like humble oneself. Like sometimes I have to remind myself I'm here to learn and I need to humble myself and be and accept things as it is, like, and then work on the changes. I mean, despite many years have passed, I think it's not just a you thing, it's also a me thing, and it's like an artist thing, and not just in art, like in other form of profession as well. It's like a journey to humble oneself.
Yeah. If if you don't mind, I can give you one tip that I realized it's helped me over the past. Actually, two tips. So the first one is to vent out with a friend or with your parents or with your girlfriend or anyone that you feel it's close to you. You can say, "Oh, this company doesn't know what they want. This client is such X, Y, and Z, and they're a mess." You can say it out loud to them. It will make you feel a lot. And if you get some feedback, try to distance yourself from the piece for one day or at least the afternoon or something like that. Because sometimes it happens to me that I read the feedback and I'm like, God damn it, not again. I have to change this and that. And, take a breath, just call your friends, go out, do something fun, and then come back to it. Because I find it to be really like the most effective thing for me. Because if I try to work the changes like right as I get them, I feel like I'm gonna be like super bummed out during the whole process and I'm gonna be angry and doing it like quickly and trying to get it over with and that's gonna be like bad overall. So I've learned to distance myself a little bit. But yeah,
Yeah, those are good
I'm okay.
advice. Yeah, it's good that we're talking more about the emotional side of things because these are problems that everybody face, and but nobody really dares to talk about it.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
yeah, and
for sure.
I realize this painting might be a good example of chiaroscuro and no-ten. Like the
Yeah,
background is chiaroscuro, then the whole character is like a very sharp no-ten.
yeah, you got it.
I
That's pretty much
finally
it.
got it.
Yeah, like once you start seeing it, you're gonna see it everywhere, and it's just gonna be one more tool for you to use.
And then I start to see like the flow line towards like the face, like everything just crisscrossing to the face. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean you talk about the flow and now I'm starting to see more of it.
Yeah, happy that's the case, man.
For your shin piece, which is like I want to know like how do you do it? Like what's the process? And how do you
Oh
balance
wait,
the light and dark in the painting?
wait, can you repeat the first part of the question because I didn't hear it.
Right. My bad. So for your shin painting, what's your
Oh,
process
okay.
like and how do you balance the light and dark?
So this one was tough again, similar as the Zoe one because pretty much every part of this character glows. So you have to uh like the one mistake that I did all the time during this painting is like I told you, just create a color dodge layer and go like, yes, this is important, and then yes, and it's important. Yes, the arm is. But as you do that, like since everything is important, nothing really becomes important
Important, yeah.
anymore. So what I've kind of like learned to do, and this was Ming Chen, the art director at West Studio, that basically taught me this, is to like just pick one or two spots to be the most important ones, to be the highest in value. And if I put this in black and white, you can see clearly that it is this zone right here and this one right here, where both of the hands are like doing the action, you know? So the sword, even though it glows, it's not really like super shiny, and that's by design because again, I think the more glow that you put into these things, the more out of control they go. So I also think about it as like it can be an arbitrary choice, but it can also be a functional choice. So if he's performing this action, which is the iconic action for the character, then I think it makes sense to have the hand be the highest in value. And if he's grabbing a sword from his back, which is kind of an unconventional pose, you want to include like high value range in that area to be able to describe what's happening because it might be difficult to read. And even if, like, even if the silhouette of the fist and the sword and everything, it's there, it's still kind of like difficult to read. So just it becomes a lot about like knowing where to put your efforts. And like I told you, it can be very like a discretionary choice, or it can be a functional choice. You know, extra points if you go for the functional choice. But yeah. What I painted when I painted this, what I had in mind is this sort of like value simplification. So I have this dark background, right? And then I have my subject, which is going to be uh, basically just as dark as the background, but I'm going to separate it with a very soft value, you know? So you can see the lighting in the window, how it's slightly lighter than the rest of the character. So this is my value structure for this piece. So I've got this side catching the light, and then I got this side creating a silhouette. So this is what I had in mind when I was doing this. Mm. And as you can see, like this is a good piece for me to start working on because I am familiar with this way of thinking. This is pretty much everything uh, is chiaroscuro right here. So this is the most natural way of thinking about this for me at the time. So it was a good fit. But if you were to like, I don't know, give me like one of the more recent panda art paintings to work as my very first piece, like it would have been a disaster. Like something like this, I was not really familiar with at the time, so it would have been way more difficult. So yeah, that's it.
Wow. So, but you talk about color blindness and red. Yeah, colorblind to red, right? How do you manage
Yeah,
to do this piece with that difficulty?
I mean, like I'm not so 100% honesty here. I'm not diagnosed yet, but
Mm-hmm.
this right here, especially like the pinks, like this looks like completely gray to me.
Okay.
Like I have to go all the way to like the more saturated tone to
Yeah.
realize that this is pink. And if you go into like the lighter sort of areas, still
Mm-hmm.
saturated but light, and you put all of these different like hues with different saturations, uh, especially around this area of the blues and purples and everything, I have no idea which hue is which one right here. Like I just know that they're light and that they're cool, and that's it. I have no idea like if this is blue, pink, purple. Just I have to rely heavily on the Photoshop color wheel. So that's why the crystal rose painting was such a hard one to do for me because it has a lot of those colors in it. And if you see something funny about the colors, then you know that's why. But for example, the thumbnails, the color keys that I did, like they're a lot more saturated. They're a lot towards purple, and that's why. Because like in my eyes, these look like desaturated. They look fine, harmonious. But when people saw that, they were like, "No, this is too purple." Uh, but yeah, that's kind of like my issue here. So the way to work around it is to rely heavily on the color wheel, and specifically for me, I do have a lot more control on the logic of lighting than the logic of the blending modes. So if I want to take this color and make it warmer and make it lighter, I can move it towards the warm, move it towards the light, and then I got something reasonable. But if I were to try to do that with adjustment layers, I would have a lot more of a hard time trying to judge if this was the right decision or not. So that's the way that I work around it. Mm. But like I told you, I don't think this was um, like a setback in my career because for the most part, I never knew that I was colorblind like this. I just found out in a casual conversation with friends. Like, can you get me that green thing over there? And I handed them the red one, and I was like, okay, that's a problem. But yeah, that's how I found out.
Damn. I'm speechless. Like it's like 100页 you still can manage to paint this piece and yeah other pieces. So I didn't expect you to have this difficulty.
Yeah, like it's not like like I told you, it was not really something that played against me. I would say, in fact, it's something that worked in my favor because if I can forget about color, I can just look at things for the black and white, and then I can say, okay, so this is cool. I understand that if the black and white works, then I can do whatever I want with the colors.
Right.
There's this one piece that I did that many people like, and it was fun to me, but someone recently told me and asked me, like, why is the character cheeks, the side plane of the face, why is it pink? And I was like, what do you mean pink? I don't see any pink. I have no idea what you're talking about. So I had to like go in here and check out what they meant because this is invisible to me. To me, this is the same hue as this,
Oh.
you know?
Okay.
really. So I was like, no, just a happy accident, I guess. But yeah, that's that's how it went.
So for your Shen piece, you know that the main attraction is the hand and him grabbing onto his sword. That's why the tonal range, the contrast is focused there. That's why you put all your focus on, right?
Yep.
Just to clarify, right? And then everything else, the tonal range is not as wide. That's how you make this painting look balanced because he's a very glowy character.
Yeah, 100%. If you want to learn more about this kind of visual hierarchy thing, like the best one that I know of is Alex Flores.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, Alex.
he has a lot of like good examples of visual hierarchy. So yeah, like you can clearly see like top one priority for example right here is the helmet. It has the highest value. It's the brightest. It's where everything leads towards. Then probably number two is like the lighting on the body, and number three would be like the weapon because even though it's glowing, it's not as bright. So yeah, just many good examples in Alex Flores' work.
Yep. Wish to see more of his stuff.
He's like completely disappeared, right? Like I
Yeah.
haven't seen anything from him in years,
Ages.
honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
For
think
yeah.
uh I think Chen Wei Pan told me that he's still working at Riot, but he's just like not sharing publicly what he's doing. I don't think he's working in Splash anymore, but yeah.
So for your porcelain graves splash art, right? I noticed that
Hmm.
the porcelain materials, like you have done a very good job. So how do you make it look so good? Like yeah, I mean yeah, people are looking at the characters and here I am looking at the porcelain materials that you have done. I'm like oh, impressed. Like did you really
Thank
heavily
you.
focus on reference or how do you just make it so good?
I mean, I appreciate the comment. In my eyes, like, yes, this is okay, this is good, but I think back in the day, I didn't really understand lighting and materials and the stylization as much as I do now. So I do see a lot of things that could be improved. But for the areas that we all may like about this piece, like how do I get this crispy kind of information, this sort of like juicy little details? A lot of patience. That's one answer. The other answer is um, many of these things I would do with the lasso tool. So you can see how this right here has a perfect edge.
Yeah.
Like all of those shapes are really difficult to get done by hand. So if you want to do it like to get it completely uh, perfect, basically, you need to do it with tools that allow you to get very hard edges. But one of the reasons that I'm not uh, like super stoked about this piece anymore, it's because I've learned that edges have a lot more nuance to them. So pretty much all of the edges that you see around this area are super sharp,
Yeah.
right? Like you can even see the pecs and everything. And while that is good, I think that when I look at the work of people like Bo Chen, uh, I realized that they don't really go for that kind of approach, and they get a lot more expressive sort of edge work by not doing that. So if you look at this, like you can see how crisp the face really feels because so many like hard edges and like the texture of the skin is like beautiful and everything feels in focus. But as you move away from the head, from the face into the side of the head, there's very little information and the edges are not as crisp anymore. They feel softer, you know? That's something that I feel like in my work wasn't really that present, and that's something that I'm trying to like incorporate more for the future. So yeah, that's kind of the way that I look at edges now. But I don't know if you like this sort of treatment that I did for graves, you can definitely think about tools like the lasso tool, or I have this one brush. I can give it to your Discord server so that you can try it out. This is from, I saw this the first time by Evan Lee, the
Taiwanese artist.
yeah, the Taiwanese artist on YouTube. And he has this like super useful brush because it's like one hard edge in one side and then this one um, kind of like softer edge on the other one. So it is like super useful to create form. So if I do this and I smudge things out, I get a perfect cut right here. So let's say I want to create any sort of like other shape around, like I can just go for that, you know? And this is kind of what I would actually do in my own paintings. Like I would grab this thing, create a new layer, find the sort of like brush mark that I want to make, refine it, merge it. Then I can work on top of it, or I can create a new layer. And uh, if I'm feeling spicy, I can also use the, what's the name of this tool? The mixer brush
Right.
to create some sort of like edge variety or to create anything here. And if I'm feeling even more like crazy splash arty, I can go for a texture brush.
Right.
Maybe something like, let me look it up. I think, oh, I think I moved it right here. So new layer, I can grab the same color and I can go for something like this. Same thing. I can, I do a bigger brush stroke that I need so that I can erase it and just use the parts that I need. You know? So it looks very crisp and very intentional and just in a few spots. And, you know, it's not really that time consuming. It's just there. And yeah, then I can do pretty much anything that I want with these brushes.
Right. So we all so you emphasize on edge control, the hard edge and soft edge before adding in more details.
Yeah, 100%. So that's usually why the way that I work, and I find it to be like very effective at creating like something that looks clean from the very beginning rather than cleaning up as you go. But again, that's just my personal preference. I don't even know what I'm painting, but this is fun, man.
So for your visual effects, how do you do them? Do you apply like the same principle? Like I noticed that you're quite well versed in visual effects for your splash art as well. So how do you manage those?
Oh, I'm gonna give you the secrets. I'm gonna show you the sauce right here. You
Then
ready?
so
It's called Pinterest.
whoever watches this video is gonna get the secrets.
Yeah, this is like the best well-kept secrets up until now. So usually VFX are a pain in the butt if you want to create a very specific thing. What I would recommend is just photo batch them and work on top of them. So if I want to create a light beam, then I can go into light beam. The beautiful thing is that you don't even need super well versed into like the kind of words that you need to describe the effects, because if you go into Pinterest, and you click on the image you like, it is going to recommend you several images that are really similar or have like a good sort of effect. And trust me, you would have never come up with this one unless you were exploring different kind of visual effects. Um, Usually, when you get commissioned to do a painting, they already give you some sort of like example of what the um, visual effects of the skin will look like, so you can use it as a base. But for like sparkling things, let's say I like this image. Let's say I like this one right here. So I'm gonna copy, I'm gonna paste it, I'm gonna set it to you can you can look for the blending mode that you feel like it's better. So screen, for example, you know, and you can manipulate the image, you can change the color to whatever you want, you can distort it into perspective, you can create copies of the same thing, you know, and that's how you would like get to it. If you really need to modify it to create something more specific, then you can also like either liquefy it or paint on top of it. So liquefy it, like let's say I don't want a star anymore. Let's just say that I want a freaking galaxy or something like that.
So that's how you manage
Yeah.
the Zoe's visual effects, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Like I have many cool tricks that I've learned only because I had to research them, you know? So a lot of the answers for visual effects and like really good things, it's right here in the filter gallery. So in the filter gallery, you can also apply the glass effect, the glass distortion effect, and that's how you get the heat distortion that you see in some of the splash art. For example, the one by Alex, that we just looked at, the Pantheon. Do you see the heat distortion?
Yeah.
This is this is how you do it in filter gallery. And it's not really hard, it's just working and knowing your tools. So you can do that. And one other one that's super fun to use, like usually in when you go to liquify, you have the bloat tool, which we all use, and you have the shrink tool, right? But I also find to be super funny to use the twirl clockwise tool, which is C in your shortcuts. So if you click it, it starts to spiral things into one single thing, right? But if you want to like do something crazy, you can also do spiraling motions as you do it. And it is going to deform and create something that is like very unique and fun. So you don't need to do all of these like um, visual effects that are like sweeping gesture motions. You don't need to do them by hand. Work with your tools. That's how I get them.
Wow. Magician's secrets has been unveiled. Has been revealed.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I wish I saw this in many other stuff like that, but I just had to find out about just exploring on my own. But yeah, they're yours now.
The viewers, the communities.
Yeah.
Can you? Are you looking at my screen?
Yep.
Uh, so what inspired you to do this painting?
Mm. So I really like that painting in particular because it felt like a good step outside of my comfort zone, but
Yeah.
at the same time it felt familiar because like that piece is like heavily inspired by this guy's work.
Oh, Ji-hoon, the grayscale god.
Yeah. But if you see like the way that he uses shapes and merges shapes together to create something like that. And even he uses like the guys in the suits, right? So this was basically like what I took as inspiration from his work and then created something out of it. Mm, but to be honest with you, most of my paintings really do start as a Pinterest reference that I like for whatever reason, and then I mix it up with some of the other uh, illustrations or photography or anything that I really. So it applies for many, many, if not all of my paintings.
So for this painting, you are just inspired by how Ji-hoon plays with his characters, and you apply it straight with color and your variation of colors.
Yeah, like also his shape language and his sense of like merging shapes. So you can see in this white character, everything is pretty much white, but you do have a lot of like hard edges inside the form that describe the folds of the figure. And they're like so aesthetically pleasing that I was like, how do you do it? You know? So I copied it until I found like a similar way at least of doing it. But
For
yeah.
for colors, do you use the square or do you use the triangle?
For what?
For when you choose colors, I noticed that you are playing with the
Oh,
triangle, but some artists use the square. So what's your preference?
oh, I go with a triangle. To be honest with you, like I think someone set up Photoshop for me, and this has been the default setting for me for years, so I never explored outside of it. But I do think that the triangle is more accurate in the sense that um, it will give you, um, I think, in my opinion, it will give you a little bit more accuracy on how saturation works and values work in some colors. Like, mm, or I mean, I could be just completely like talking for the sake of talking. This
No,
is
it's
just
fine.
my default.
So when there is increased light, there's usually an increased saturation, and when there's lesser light, there's a decreased saturation. Or is it the other way around? Like, what's your thoughts on it?
So it's usually like Marco Bucci has this really good video about it. I'm gonna send it to you right after. Um, but it's usually like if you pick a color at 50% value, and you go full saturation, like not all colors have the same sort of like vibrancy to it in this range, you know? So like for example, the most saturated yellow is not at 50% brightness. It's actually like here. And same thing with the reds. This is way more vibrant. And with the blues. But the thing is like all of these values are kind of like different, you know? So if I look at them in black and white, you can see that the blue is darker, then the red, and finally you've got the white. So knowing exactly which kind of value gets you the high saturation, it kind of like allows you to think one step ahead of the illustration problems. Because if you know, like, you're working on a skin that has a lot of like gold materials in it, well, if you want the gold to be like this specific color, then you have to think about it as you're doing the thumbnails and as you're doing the planning so that this color can be this color can exist in your composition and that everything can work around it, you know? Because if I'm planning like a um let's say I want the gold to be super super shiny, but I'm doing a night scene, you know? And everything is like super super blue and super super dark. Like if I want to put a golden sphere right here, like it's gonna be actually very desaturated. It's gonna still look like gold, but it's gonna be like heavily desaturated in comparison. you
Okay,
know?
so that's
So
yeah.
exactly, that's what I'm saying. You need to like consider what's best and what's not really want to work based on the actual saturation of the color.
So it's based on number one is color properties, like, and number two would be how the environment and the object interact with each other.
Yeah, 100%.
Because sometimes I'm just confused, like with a simple object, when there's light shining on an object, I know if it's shining on a yellow ball or a blue ball. I'm just confused whether like the saturation tend to increase if it's a white light shining on both object, or will the saturation decrease because more light is shining on them. That I think
Yeah,
there are so many answers that on the internet that I'm confused.
yeah, I 100% feel your way because, I've had this problem in the past before, and usually what I found to be my quote unquote solution is not even to focus too much on the actual color of the object that I've got, but more so think about the color palette that I'm working with. So you see, the first thing that I did here was to paint the background this dark bluish kind of color. Um, so I am setting my palette to have this as my primary color right here. This is like 90% of my painting, you know? So everything has to work within the same sort of palette. Have you worked traditionally before with like oil and something like that?
Nope.
Well, if you were to do it traditionally, you don't have the whole color wheel for you. You have to buy paints and you only have like limited amount of paint tubes, you know? So what I mean by limited color palette is imagine as if you were doing it traditionally and you only have like a tube that is this sort of red and then maybe this sort of yellow, orangish kind of thing, and then you've got like this blue. So everything must be contained within uh, these colors, right? So there's like a really good book on this thing. And again, my favorite people to look after this kind of advice is again Marco Bucci. And the book that I want to recommend is by James Gurney.
Color and light.
Yes. He also has a YouTube channel where he paints um, outdoors, and he does so with wash and watercolor. Super, super insightful. So what I'm trying to say is like if you're gonna have this to be like 80% of your painting, all of these colors have to come closer towards here so that they are harmonious. So the way to harmonize something is to make it influenced by the same color. So if I go in here and put a little bit of this on top and then put a little bit of this on top, it is going to bring it closer to the same hue. And that's mentally what I'm doing with this. So I know that this would be like super saturated and it can work. It is a stylistic choice after all. But if you're going by the rules of light, in this palette, it would not exist in this much saturation. So what ends up happening is I desaturate it and I like try to play within my new limitation.
Right. So
I
we.
think a useful I think a useful thought about this is let's say you have this object that is supposed to be like yellowish in your composition, and then let's say you have an object that is less yellow than this one. It's less saturated. So you can have it as reference, but you can know exactly how much to desaturate something or to combine it with the background by establishing a clear priority, a clear hierarchy. So this is kind of like still looks like yellowish, you know, but it's much more desaturated than this because I want this one to be the main thing.
Right.
So whenever I'm finding like trouble with the colors, I ask myself like, what's the most yellow in this illustration? And then I work backwards to make sure that I have my range properly set up. I don't know if that makes sense though.
Right, so a lot of it is based on the ambient influence, what's the main ambience, and then we work relatively towards that, which is like a
Yeah,
yellow ball in a heavily blue saturated environment, so it should be less saturated and more of a cooling color temperature.
yeah, 100%. That's it.
Oh, yeah, so we think relatively, okay. For your personal painting, I realize you follow like Pinterest for this, but I like how you make it like such like, you know, it has a very strong mood. Like
Mm.
she's like relaxing after work at night. I mean, it looks better than the reference. So I'm curious how you manage to make it work.
Yeah, so I think that most of the paintings that I do come from Pinterest, but it's not like I'm copying the reference one to one. Uh, I usually think about the thing that caught my attention, you know? So in this case, I really like the fact that she could be looking at herself into the mirror. And I also like the composition, the trailing of objects coming from bottom right, creating a sweeping curve all the way to her body and the candles and stuff like that. So yeah, that's the one. So I designed everything around it, and I filtered out all the elements that were uh, helping me with communicating that idea. So I didn't really care about showcasing the face. I just cared about showcasing the way that she was like standing or like crouching, I mean. And I only care about the mood. So not showing the face might be actually better because you only want to focus on the candles and the lighting. So I think uh, a lot of the things that you may like from someone's paintings, it's because they have been kind of designed in a way. Like some happy accidents may happen for sure, but I think most of the times when you see something that you like, it's very intentional. So the question might be like, how do I make my stuff more intentional so that I can achieve the same kind of thing? And the answer is like over time you become a little bit more self-aware and you become aware of your surroundings. So you can actually try this out yourself too. Like you know that when it's rainy and it's dark, you feel sad and it feels nostalgic. And when you go out and see the sunshine, it's like a hopeful ray, right? So these are kind of cliches, but they are true in a um, but they are very much true because that's how we experience this kind of emotions. So something that I find myself being able to do a lot better than when I started to paint is to describe with words the thing that I want to paint and the things that I'm experiencing. So if you can do that, you can build a mental library for how you want to uh, for how you want your audience to feel when they look at your painting, you know?
How they feel when they look at my painting.
hmm
Is there like a fixed formula for that?
I mean, there's not really like a fixed formula for like, oh, this means you're gonna feel sad, and this means you're gonna feel like this and that. It's mostly about, I find it to be mostly about personal experiences, you know? Maybe there was this time when you were going back home and the train was alone, like nobody else sitting in the train, so you felt kind of like, I don't know, uncomfortable maybe, or you felt kind of like, oh, such a good experience. So you might frame it differently, but the experiences are unique to you. And even though nobody else has the same experiences as you have, you when you put them in your paintings and when you integrate them in any sort of way, people will resonate with them because reality is not really objective. You and I can be looking at the same thing and completely different. So it doesn't matter what the actual emotion or what the actual intention that you set out to be really is. all that matters is that there is an intention so that people can take away whatever they think uh, that it fits their vision of reality.
Right. So based on our intention and our life experience, it will convey the output of the painting. And if they share the same experience or different experience, they can either relate or not relate as much to the painting.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Wow, man. You know this painting, like this fan art that you did, like there's so many
Oh
characters in
yeah.
it. How do you harmonize this painting? Like, how to
Oh, I
paint so many
don't. I
characters?
don't. I didn't. This was all Blake Beyond's work, basically.
Oh,
Uh, well, credit where it's due, you know. This was the first painting I did an Envar official cards for Legends of Runeterra. But the problem was that it was a little bit too big of a challenge for me. You know, so many characters for my first piece, you know? So since it was a mess and I didn't have the skills at the time to like fully carry out with this painting in the given timeline, um, I had a lot of like help from different illustrators. I think this was Leonardo Sala. I think it was Blake Bion. I'm not sure if it was Davi. All of these guys from Anvar, I think they helped me at some point. Like they were either rendering some character or they were helping me establish the composition or things like that. So it was really a team effort,
teamwork.
but I
Yeah.
was not well equipped to like pull this myself.
Yeah, this looks very challenging.
Yeah.
Man, it looks really difficult.
Like I can say that I had a lot of fun, but it was also like pushing me to my limits at the time.
You know, oh yeah, Spider Verse.
Mm,
I
yeah.
noticed like this is like the Spider Verse style, but you seem to like modify a bit to your own preference. Like, what inspired you to produce this sort of style?
Oh, so this was like so this was a fun challenge that we did with friends from my art friend group in here in Bucaramanga. And it was basically we were so inspired by the movie that we had a huge collaboration painting. So everybody picked one character and we all put him to. But the catch was that we had to draw it in our own style. So everybody had like very different visions which actually matched the style of the Spider-Verse movie because different universes have different art styles. And this was like heavily inspired by everything that I've learned up until this point. Like all these random brushstrokes and everything, like a lot of them come from Morikabuchi influence on manipulate your brushes. A lot of the shape, language, and like striking sort of visuals come from the directions, the art direction of League of Legends. The graphic look might actually come from what's the name of this artist? Phil Hale. Let me look it up. Yeah. So very graphic compositions for the body, very graphic shapes. Um, so it might be something that influenced that specific piece. But overall, like it was mostly just something for fun and something created like with other people around me. So yeah.
I noticed there's lots of no ten properties in this painting.
Mm, yeah. You see, you're starting to see it. Like it's now a part of you.
Yeah, good to clarify. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, the yeah, this whole painting is like very no ten, except like the lighting on these pants, like the tie that's more chiaroscuro, like that's more form change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's pretty much following the
No
rules
ten,
of,
yeah.
you know, yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
For this painting, like this has so many interesting shapes and layout and dynamics. Like, is this a study or like do you get some sort of Pinterest reference and you continue to expand on it?
Yeah, I actually got a lot of like uh again, like I told you, I did not focus too much on color in my early days because I felt comfortable with like monotone and black and white. And I found a lot of like Greek statues, paintings, or stuff like that on Pinterest, and I would go at it. So this is pretty much like a study or like a trying my best to copy and maintain proportions and shapes and make it readable. But yeah, it was a study for fun, basically.
Right, so this is a study, but you did it in your own style.
Yeah, I mean the like the reference is pretty close to this one. I don't think I have it, uh, but yeah, there's a lot of like copying directly from the reference.
Man, I looked through your Instagram. I noticed you draw like a lot of animals, creatures, monsters back then in your earlier days.
Uh-huh.
I guess that's because you draw Pokemon from a young age and it sort of like brought over the interest. I'm guessing.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, like I haven't really been so big into creatures and anything like that because like you can ask me to draw any sort of like body part, any angle, human figure, but if you ask me to draw a freaking cat, I'm gonna panic, you know? Because I cannot draw cats for fun's sakes, you know? Like
Memes.
maybe this is my cat. I have no idea really like about animal anatomy or anything. And it was super difficult because some of the paintings that I've done have required me to animals before. So like this Ari piece
Yeah.
to draw the deer, to draw the wolves, the foxes, and everything. That's where I spend most of my time because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But yeah,
So you talk about the importance of facial expressions. How do you get better at facial expressions? I know
mm.
besides studying Disney arts, and looking through like
Yeah.
realism.
So I think the difficult part about facial expressions is not actually painting them, but actually being able to find reference for the thing that you want. Because at least English is not my first language, so most of the vocabulary it's not really familiar to me. So I can say happy, sad, surprised, or anger, right? But when you say something like determined or seductive or alluring, those kind of words are not in my natural. I have to look them up because that's what most of the League of Legends kind of like expressions fall into. You know, you can barely tell that a character in League is happy, sad, surprised, or angry. It's much more nuanced than that. And to find reference for it, you just need to find like the right adjective for that. So what I usually do is like I describe the emotion that I'm trying to convey to ChatGPT, and he will tell me the word that I'm looking for. So just something that you can consider using. But if you do know the words for it, I think the important aspect of facial expressions is that you can achieve anything with, if you move your eyebrows, your eyes, and your mouth. Like noses, don't even bother with noses when you're trying to do facial expressions. They don't add pretty much anything. So if you learn how to manipulate and how to move, how to stretch and squash the eyes, mouth, and eyebrows, that's where all the expressions lie. And if you ask me, like best way to freaking learn expressions is to look at emojis. It's the most simplified way of creating like easy to understand facial expressions, you know? So you can then put them in perspective, you can then like make them follow human proportions, but this is like the base sort of layer underneath everything. So I usually when I do thumbnails before I do any sort of like facial expression, let's say I'm drawing this character right here. right? So I would not bother to do like all of the construction, then the face and everything to do it. Like right about here, I would do this, you know, just to know that this is going to be a happy expression. I don't want to like overthink it too much, and then I can start refining, you know? But this is what I usually start with, and that's how my painting goes.
Wow. Damn. So, have you ever considered starting a community or platform where you can interact with more of your fans, your students, and the community?
Yeah. So I've been planning to do that for a long time. Um, I guess the real issue right now is that since I'm working full time with Pandart and I'm taking other jobs on the side and I'm also doing mentorships occasionally and workshops, I'm just too tired to do it sometimes, you know?
Yeah, I
So
understand.
it's usually it's usually a matter of that. But I do think that it's very likely that I'll create my Discord server and community and update my YouTube channel like um at the very least in the this year in the future, I mean. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's where you can expect to see my stuff. But mostly on Instagram posts, which are the most immediate way for me to do it. So
So,
yeah.
you talk about your mentorships and courses. Can you tell the viewers like where can they find these mentorships and what does your mentorship offer?
Sure. Um, so for my mentorships, I don't have a website. I don't have a page where you can look up the information or anything. Usually, whenever I get a mentorship going on, it's because many people have asked me about it at the same time. So I figured, okay, so let's do it, you know? But I don't have a website for you to check out yet. So if you're interested in mentorships or anything like that, you can DM me on Instagram and it would be fine. Mm, I do have plans to create a dedicated page for that, but it hasn't happened now, and yeah, it's going to take some time. What my mentorships are about is I'm going to guide you through the process of creating a splash art painting from start to finish during 8 weeks, give or take. And I'm going to do a demo of a painting alongside you. So let's say if you're painting a female assassin character like Katarina, I'm going to try my best to paint something similar so that you see the problems that I run into when I draw this sort of like body type or this sort of like character type so that you can learn from them and apply it in your own paint. And I'm going to give you video lessons every week about every kind of subject matter, like we've been doing so on this interview, but much more in depth. And I also give you, yeah, feedback every single week. So you can understand what you did wrong, you can tackle what you have to do better, and yeah, you can chat with me anytime, basically. So that's what my mentorships are about. So if you're interested, just text me on Instagram and yeah.
Yep, this would be good for the viewers.
I mean, I hope so. I hope so.
So, do you have any like words or advice you want to share with the community?
Mm, yeah. So usually, like I've told you sometimes during this interview, I consider myself to be very lucky because of the people that I've met. And if there's one thing that I see that many people don't really actively do, is to genuinely try to make friends. Like I told you, I have encountered many, many generous people, and it's because of them that I am where I am today. And honestly, they make the ride so much more fun, and you feel like you have a sense of community around you. So, finding friends, it's the one kind of like recommendation that I would actually give you, you know? So, if you don't have any art friends near you or you don't know anybody, I'm sure there's going to be 1,000 people interested in the same things that you are in Discord communities on Instagram post. You can comment on someone's post and then you can chat with them after. Like there's so many possibilities. But I would say that if you do take the effort of making genuine friends, like you're gonna make your chances of, first of all, uh, living a long-lasting career instead of a fast but really short career, you're gonna increase those chances. And you're also gonna enjoy the ride a lot more because it's kind of frustrating when you don't have anyone that shares your interests because you feel isolated. You don't feel like you belong anywhere. And yeah, believe it or not, those friends that you make today who are just as inexperienced or interested in whatever subject that you have, those are going to be the ones that are going to call you to bring you a hand when you need to, basically. So if any of them happen to be in a position to hire someone, guess what? You're going to be the first one that they think of if you have the skills. So that's actually how I got my first job. It was not at Nbar. My first job was at Illuvium, which is an NFT cryptocurrency kind of game, and
Yeah,
I
I
had
heard
to
about
design
it.
port. Yeah. So the only reason I got this job is because one friend that I did from one friend I met in the Robot Pencil mentorship offered me the job. And I had barely like yeah, we would talk regularly, like every like once a week or something like that, but it would be like friendly conversation, nothing more than that. And then when his boss asked him like, "Hey, I need this kind of work. Do you know anybody within your net?" He was happy to recommend me because what? Nobody else in the mentorship had spoken to the other students, you know? So they were just like focused on their own thing. And that's the kind of thing that has helped me out a lot, honestly. So make a lot of friends and genuinely make friends. If you're only making friends with the art directors of guess what? Those are not friends. Those are like connections, and people appreciate it when you are honest about it. I mean, genuinely go out and make friends. It'll make your life so much better.
Wow, that's really good advice. And you know, I'm friends with Aaron as well, and we have been like communicating, especially since he has done a video with you, and I want to like mention in this video that Santiago and Aaron has done an interview video as well, and I'm gonna like promote it in the link and description. It's not uploaded yet at this point of time, but I'll just put a link to his YouTube channel and the current video that is uploaded, which is on thumbnails. And once
Yeah.
that video is out, I'll just continue update the description so the viewers can have the Santiago combo this month or next month.
Yeah, appreciate it, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I enjoy Santiago's content. I enjoy Aaron's content. Aaron really put in a lot of efforts in his videos. Yeah, with all
Yeah.
his memes.
Like he's really good at making it fun and entertaining to
Yeah,
watch so you can actually absorb the content. Just really amazing.
yeah,
There's very little splash art, quote unquote, information and tutorials on YouTube, so very happy to see that he's doing some more of it.
yeah. I hope he works very hard as well. I hope he achieves some success.
Yeah, I sure hope so too.
You know, maybe I've asked this before, but I noticed your improvement has been quite rapid over these few years. Like, I know that working hard, having a focus, simplifying, focus on one thing at a time is important. But are there any other tips and tricks on how you improve that fast,
Sure.
or gradually? Yeah,
So the fast way of doing things is to take long to do things, which is kind of like contradiction, but um, I think the only reason that I managed to get into splash art that quickly, it looks quickly to you, but to me it was like many years, you know? It's because that was my sole focus, and that was the only one thing that I was doing at the time. So I was not dabbling in like, maybe I want, or maybe the industry needs more 3D backgrounds, or I should do this watercolor course, or I should learn this new skill because it might help me out later. I was not really focused like that. I was just blindsided, gaslit, tunnel vision, call it whatever you want, into splash art. So much so that all of my art influences nowadays are splash art related, which I don't really like because you only grow once you consume different things because there's only so much you can do with the same sort of like information day. So that's kind of one of my goals for this year, to branch out and explore different art mediums. So, for example, when I am with my girlfriend, we watch movies and we usually like I usually let her pick a movie because I don't have any taste for them and I don't have anyone that is like, "Oh, I have this favorite movie from childhood or whatever." So I let her pick the movie and I'm most of the times like happily surprised to see new art style and new stories and new ways to tell the story and new everything. So it's like really really fun for me to do that kind of thing. So but to be honest with you, the only reason that I got to where in such a quote unquote short period of time is because I was obsessed. You know, if there was one superpower that I got, it's that one. I'm obsessive. So if I go to a restaurant and I like the meal that I ordering that all my life, I'm not gonna look for every single meal in the restaurant. You know, so that's kind of what happened with League. I got so obsessed, so into it that I didn't stop until I got it. So that's kind of my key here, my key point here.
Right.
Mm.
You're
So
obsessed with being a league artist.
yeah, but here's the caveat. When you're starting out, you are very naive and you don't know exactly what's there for you in the future. And there's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of like difficult feelings to navigate. My advice for that is that being naive, it's a blessing. So if you were to tell me that in order to find a stable, quote unquote, job, meaning I can work with a studio more than just once, I would have to go through probably 3 years of constant rejections and feeling like my work was not good enough and not being able to figure out why. And if you were to tell me that I would have to go through that with Envar, with West, with Illuvium, with six more vodka, to then finally get someplace that I'm not even like 100% uh, confident with my skills because Chinese artists are so freaking good, you know? I have to keep improving every single day just to. So if you were to tell me that from the very beginning, I would probably be like, you know what? Maybe IT is not even that bad. Maybe I should like there's a safer path and it's not that risky, you know? So being naive, it's a blessing because when you don't obsess about the things that could go wrong, you put a lot of time into the things that can go right in your mind. So yeah.
Yeah. You know, your story reminds me of Chase' story as well. He tells me that he's very obsessed with wanting to work for Riot Games and being a splash artist, and he attended classes, and while he draw his splash art in his other monitor, he would just keep replay classes over and over again. Like there's an obsessive nature to it, and that's how he succeeded. So if I'm not wrong, that's what he told me. So I think there's similarities in both of your stories, which I think is a key factor for the viewers to think about.
Yeah. Like I've heard many other upcoming stories from other artists, and yeah, they're all kind of like obsessed, and uh, that's kind of their superpower at the very beginning. But yeah, I'm trying to say, be naive. Just don't question like how many times. Just go for it. You know.
Don't question how many times what I got cut off.
Oh, like don't question yourself or don't ask yourself like how many tries have to do I have to go through before there's one yes, you know, or how many knocks how many doors I need to knock on before one answers, you know?
Yeah,
Like you just you just go at it. You just have fun and you just be naive.
yeah.
That's the way.
So as you know, I'm in Singapore, and recently, like my Singapore school has like invited me to be a junior lecturer in school, teaching like the more basic subjects. And I want to ask you, since I think you are a very good teacher from this interview, how do you get so good at teaching and expressing yourself? Like it seems very natural to you. Is it due to experience, or are there any tips or
Mm.
tricks you could share? Because I'm feeling quite nervous, even when I'm interviewing you. Like, so I guess I'll be nervous when I'm teaching even the basics to my students.
Mm. Well, I appreciate the compliment because yes, being able to express myself is something that I've had to learn over the years, and that is something that I have to put a lot of emphasis on to make my points come across to my students. So the short answer is you have to just uh, expose yourself to situations where you have to be the teacher in the room and try your best to teach. There's, of course, you can watch 1,000 tutorials on how to do it and like how to keep track of the conversation and like don't get distracted and all that sort of stuff. But I think the best teacher is experience, and it was for me. So the first time that I tried to teach something, it was at CGverse Academy. They asked me if I could be a mentor there, and I said yes. And I had no previous mentoring experience, you know, other than a couple friends of mine, but it doesn't really count as a educational setting. Mm. And I'm sure it wasn't as great as I am today, but it made me force myself, like the fact that I had some pressure of like, okay, so these people are paying money to see my classes, then I think it's really worth it, and it's due for me to prepare for those classes. So it's not really about confidence per se of like, oh, you have to be confident in yourself and just be yourself. It doesn't work that way because being confident in your own skills only comes through, in my experience, through proof, through experience. So I'm confident in drawing human figures because I've done it 1,000 times before and I've tackled the same problems hundreds of times. So I can do it right. But every time that I teach, it's kind of different. So something that I definitely do pretty much every time that I'm going to go in before public speaking or interviewing or teaching or anything like that is I try to play out the scene in my head in front of the mirror. So I talk to myself like a crazy person in the house, you know? And thank God I live alone. But if I were to do this in front of someone, I would be a little bit embarrassed. But I rehearse my lines sometimes when I explain a very specific thing. And it's just a little bit about preparation.
Right.
But the thing is that when you do it a lot of times, it just comes naturally. You don't need to like prepare that much or think about it too hard, if that makes sense.
Right. A lot of practice by yourself, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and you can maybe try to practice if you want to like take the pressure off of the school environment. You can try with friends. Like
Yeah.
you can see what they're struggling with, and then you can try to explain to them how to simplify the problem and how to solve it. And yeah, it will you will naturally get better at it. Um, but I think if there's one single thing that I could recommend is to watch great people giving lectures.
Great
So, for
people.
example, yeah, amazing teachers. Like if you can find any good teacher, you want to study how they actually do it.
Oh.
So my best recommendations again, Marcabucci and Proco. They're very articulate. They're very well prepared. So you can take what they do and apply it to your work. And there's also this professor, Professor Yang, this Chinese professor. He's got like great lectures about history and about the world right now as it is. And the way that he teaches is so freaking clear and so good. He's a history teacher. He never mentions names or dates or specific things for you to remember. He just tries to explain it in a way that it makes sense to you without adding new information into your brain. Really, it's just like if I were to explain you how to cook something, but using a illustration analogy, you know. So you're familiar with illustration. It's very likely that you understand what I'm talking about. And what I find it to be super amazing about this guy is that no matter how complex the concept, it's so easy and so engaging to follow through. So he's one of my personal favorites. If you want to like look into teaching, but yeah, hope that helps.
Thank you so much, man. Like, I really like this vase that you painted. Looks so real. I know besides using reference, did you what's in your head when you paint something so realistic as this?
Oh man, it's like I appreciate it. It's not really realistic at all. I would say like this was like a struggle for me at the time because I didn't understand porcelain. But what I do understand now, it's that porcelain, it's this very soft material and it's very reflective. So I do have a shortcut now to try to paint something that feels like. So let's say I'm trying to paint a ball, right? So how do I make this look like actual porcelain? So the lighting, for example, first step is like, okay, main light source, and then that's pretty much it, right? Then the second step would be to think about the reflectivity of the object, you know? So it is going to pick up on the environment and it like pick up on the bounce light or maybe the sky fill light coming from above. But the key here is to do it with the appropriate edges. Because if you do it like this, it doesn't feel glossy. It doesn't feel uh like actual what's the name of the material? Porcelain.
Porcelain? Yeah.
So yeah. So but if you do it like with the lasso tool, for example, you can create softer value transitions but hard edges, and it is going to make it feel a lot more like porcelain.
Right.
So let me darken this thing a little bit.
So respect the light source and take note of the edges.
Yeah, the edges are everything here. Like if I can put this highlight right here, it already starts to feel like porcelain. And if you want to fake, quote unquote, the porcelain, well, you can imagine there's different like light sources in the environment, and you can just like sprinkle some highlights into this, you know? Which is kind of like the stylized way of doing something, which is it doesn't really have to uh, follow actual accurate lighting, but it has to be clear. So if you communicate the material better by adding this quote unquote random highlights, then you should do it. So it's a similar thing that happens with metal. Like you see many artists like adding this sort of like stripes to the metal to make it feel like very shiny.
Yeah.
Uh, it's not necessarily because they're reflecting a light source. It's just it helps to tell the story. So if I want this to feel very metallic, then I'm gonna go like this,
Yeah, we
and then I'm gonna create a
stabilizing.
bunch
Yeah.
of yeah,
So it's like no tanning your art to make it stand out, just like we add this fake shiny stuff to make it look like metal.
exactly. Yeah,
So it's like understanding
and
what makes the material and applying it. So it's like fake highlights on the metal and fake highlights on the porcelain to make it porcelain.
exactly. That's pretty much the that's pretty much the way. And the funny thing is that you don't even learn this, or you don't even know that this is a possibility until someone tells you, because usually you're too focused on trying to get things to match reality. Not always going to be the case, especially when you work for stylized game IPs. But yeah,
Right. Wow, thank you for this whole interview, man. Thank you so much for your patience for explaining all this, man. Whoever is your student is lucky to have you, you know. Thank you so much for doing this for the community. Wow,
oh man, I
thank you so much, man.
honestly, I I appreciate this opportunity and I appreciate you. I think it's super fun to do this kind of thing. And yeah, I wish you all the best and I hope this was useful. And yeah,
Yeah,
appreciate you all.
I will definitely upload this to YouTube as soon as possible. Yeah, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, no problem. We can do it anytime again.
Thank you.